Well, let's get into it. Let's get into Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. You said you've only played about 2.5, 3 hours
Maybe
ish
three. Yeah,
around
like
there.
I was explaining to you pre-show. It's hard when you're starting, stopping. I'm sure the damn timer on the Switch has it at like 9 hours because I've just had it pulled up, paused. Work's been busy. I was babysitting my niece and nephew back to back days, um, and so and that's why we're recording this a day later because I knew because I stayed up till like my plan was to go to Target to pick up Tears of the Kingdom like right away. Then I was so tired by the time it came. Uh, and I was playing Redfall. I was finishing Redfall because I was like, beat the fucking game. Um, and so I fell asleep, woke up at like 2, went to get it and everything. And it was just like, I don't know, everything got in the way. Couldn't play it nearly as much as I wanted to. So I played like maybe an hour. It was literally, it might have been split actually, like the amount of time per day.
Yeah.
Um, but I just got off, you know, this is, I mean, Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I guess this is light spoiler, but like I got off the tutorial island.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and to preface this conversation, also, like, I've played about 6 to 7 hours of the game so far. To preface this conversation, in terms of story spoilers, we will be as like spoiler free as possible, although we are still very early in the game.
I do think
So
we should
any
acknowledge like literally the opening minute story portion.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Like, we're in the very opening sections of the game. We have not gone progressed very far in terms of story, but what we talk about in terms of story here, if you consider any story spoiler stuff a spoiler, then maybe like at your own discretion. But it'll basically be talking about just like the basic premise of how this game begins and the framework of the story for
Because
what
it
we have
drops you
right
right
now.
in.
Yes, so right off the bat, I want to say that this game, it starts off and it's very clear it's going to be a very different game tonally than Breath of the Wild was. Whereas Breath of the
Darker,
Wild,
yeah.
yeah, like Breath of the Wild, it starts you off and it's like it has a bit of like a openness to it. It's like, oh, this is beautiful, this is great. Whereas this game, it starts you off like in that underground section that we very saw in the very first teaser trailer for the game. We're underground with Zelda, under Hyrule Castle. Like, things are ominous and everything. We see this wall with this murals of this war that happened long ago and everything, basically teasing what we will probably face later on in this game and what we'll learn more about as we continue through the game. And then we end up coming across well, I mean, it's Ganondorf for sure. That's confirmed now based on trailers and everything. We come across Ganondorf under the tower, and then, as we saw in the trailers, things go down. Ends up missing. Link gets hurt with his arm, and the Master Sword ends up damaged. And then we wake up in one of the Sky Islands, far, far above Hyrule. And then the beginning of the game is very similar to the beginning of Breath of the Wild in terms of you are on a secluded part of the map, and this secluded part of the map is meant to be your tutorial section, similar to how the Great Plateau was. And I'm not gonna lie, this section, I feel like I said to you before we started recording. I feel like the beginning of the game, and not just the Great Sky Island section, but even a bit after you get past that, I feel like it's more directed in terms of telling you or direct you where to go and what to do and all. But even still, I found myself just getting lost on the Great Sky Island, just like having fun exploring it, like still having that feeling, that freedom to explore, similar to how the Great Plateau gave it to you, but it was still more directed. And I feel like the game Tears of the Kingdom on the Great Sky Island, it's like, all right, hey, we're going to teach you about this, teach you about what's going on in the game, like some of your different abilities, and now we're going to start giving you the fuse ability with these shrines and all. And as you get each one, it kind of nudges you as like, okay, maybe go to this one next, maybe go to this one next. And it doesn't do it overtly, it kind of does it in a way where it's like, all right, you just got out of this shrine, now let's use this ability to get over here and then maybe go down this path. And then it's kind of like naturally, subtly leads you around the island in a way where it's like teaching you new things as you get to each new shrine and new ability. And I was like, it just felt really cool and interesting. I was like, okay, like you're still like giving me freedom to go about this the way I want to, but you're also kind of guiding me around the Great Sky Island in this circle of sorts in a way that the Great Plateau didn't. The Great Plateau was very much like, hey, yo, here's your tower, here are the shrines. Go to them however you want to. Like literally get about the Great Plateau the way you want to, however you want to. We're not going to tell you which way to go, direct you which way to go. We're not going to guide you. It's going to be like, hey, these are the things you need to, go to them. Whereas here, it's like, here's a bit of direction. It's real subtle, not overt, but it's real subtle to me. That's how I perceived it.
Yeah. I to preface this, I like the Great Plateau way more than I like this because it felt like there were more secrets. I it just because these are islands, it didn't feel like the freedom to explore was as fun. It didn't feel like yeah, so here's the thing, the Great Plateau feels less tutorially is ultimately what it
Yes,
comes down to.
yes, it does.
There's a fucking mini boss on the Great Plateau. There's not one here, you know. Well, I now again, and I don't want to say I didn't explore because I didn't feel like it didn't feel handholdy, but it all like I don't know. It's hard to summarize. I'm trying to summarize how I felt about it because I would say I almost felt let down the first hour or two. Not that like there was pressure to be something insane, but I don't think it had quite the same. But to your point, while the Great Plateau felt focused and that it was just like its own unique island, and because it didn't feel tutorially, it felt naturally part of the game. Whereas I was getting excited by the time I was finally leaving this. Whereas like Great Plateau, it was just like, oh wow, there's even more. This is sick. Whereas this one, I was just like, finally, I guess is more how I felt about getting off those islands. And it's not that
Question
I
for
didn't
you.
enjoy my time. Oh, good.
I was going to ask, do you feel like that's because the beginning section on the Great Sky Island is structurally very similar to the Great Plateau? It's so like it's you lose some of that newness, that freshness of, oh man, this is what we're this is like it's opened up to me like this. I can kind of explore it the way I want to. And again, it's also like go to this to get that, go to this to get that, go to this to get that, and like just giving you each your abilities. Do you think it was like that's part of why you enjoy the plateau more than this? Because I can understand that it's a real strong sense of familiarity and deja vu. Like, all right, I'm ready to kind of get out of here. On top of it being
It's
more heavily tutorialized.
I'll say I think that's a portion of it, but I also think I'm just one connected piece more than I am the fragmented island. Like I'll just say this, I
Mm.
think I'm gonna enjoy my time back down on land way more. And I could be wrong, and I'll admit if I was like, oh yeah, I end up liking the floating islands way more. I just don't know if I like based off this already. I'm like, yeah, I do hate when you have to like it's a pain in the ass to get from like piece to piece, or you're just like the way I like figuring out puzzles and stuff like that is not like, how do I get over there traversal wise? One of my favorite things about Breath of the Wild is like, oh, I can just fucking climb anywhere. I can just, like I can just climb.
Mm-hmm.
If like I can't figure out how to get there, I'll climb up to somewhere higher and glide to it. Um, and I this is, and I was telling you a little bit earlier, I think some of my worry with Tears of the Kingdom potentially is that things get a little too unhinged, a little too crazy because the toolbox is so much bigger. Whereas I think there was a simplicity to a lot of Breath of the Wild of like, oh, well, here's the puzzle, and you just go, oh, I can just, if I just get my stamina up enough, I can just climb it. And the Nintendo was just like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess if you figured out that you can do it that way, like they just kind of shrugged their shoulders and were like, that's fine. Whereas here it's like the toolbox is you can already tell so much crazier. Like they're definitely pushing you
Yes.
into like, you get immediately off that island and there's like a whole car kit essentially in front of you, and they're just like, or whatever you want it to be kit
Yes.
essentially. But there's the wheel, so your mind leans car slash wagonish.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're pushing you in a certain way, and that's okay. I think talking about this pre-show, some of the magic of the sauce of Breath of the Wild, and I probably this game to an extent, is you do need structure for the chaos to feel fun. Otherwise, it starts feeling like Minecraft or any damn survival game where it's just like, yeah, you can just do anything. Like the structure, the limitation, and figuring out the chaos and the fun within that and coming up with unique workarounds
Mm-hmm.
within that is what makes it fun. Otherwise, it just becomes like, eh. chaos,
Yeah.
like when everything is truly unlimited, you just start to become like, but now I don't really want to do anything, you know? You
Yeah.
need that like, hey, this is how you do it, and you figure your brain naturally figures out a different way, and then that's when you go, oh yeah, that was cool. I don't have to do it. I can do this my way.
Right. And you know, I speaking to your point of like that worry of, man, I wonder if there's going to be structure here. I was telling you before the show, and I could get into a bit more, you know, now that we're actually in the discussion itself.
Yeah,
I feel like Tears of the Kingdom, at least from what I've played so far, has more structure in the beginning of the game. And I was telling you how when you first get off the Great Sky Island, you land, and like before you even jumped off, they kind of like the camera kind of pointed at like, hey, there's a town down there that you should go to because people there are waiting for you. Or like something basically saying, hey, you should maybe go down there to that town. And when you land, that town is like basically a hop, skip, and a jump right away from right there from you. So you go into the town and like there's still a whole lot more structure. Like even when you first land on Hyrule, you can go anywhere you want to, but the game is clearly telling you, hey, go to this town, do what you need to do there before you just go wild because you don't have the main quest until you go into that town and do what you need to do there. You don't have the towers, like those aren't explained to you until you go into that town and do what you need to do. And even once you get into that town, there's you still don't necessarily have every ability open to you on the new pad, the Pura pad or the Puka pad, whatever you want to call it. Like the camera, for example, you get the camera from one of the people that's in there from another main quest that you get in the town. And when you do that quest in the town, it also introduces a whole nother concept to the game that isn't introduced unless you do that quest, or maybe you find it on your own. But the game definitely is more structured and directed in the opening hours of, hey, go here, do some of these opening quests first. That way you have, if not the whole scope of the game open to or clear to you, at least you have a majority of it clear and available to you. And then once you have your Tears of the Kingdom equivalent of the four Divine Beast quest, then, you know, once you have that, maybe once you do this quest that gives you the camera and everything, then, you know, maybe go hog wild at that point. Cause now, like, you
yeah.
have your structure of this is what I need to do. And I'm going to go about this the way I want to, however I want to. At that point, it's like, all right, the leash is off, have fun. So the opening hours, it was very different. And I was enjoying that because it was different in a good way. And I don't know if I'd say also in a bad way. I'd say it was in a good way because it was like, all right, it gave me that focus that I felt, for me at least, the few times I was trying to get into Breath of the Wild, that it lacked for me, that it made me feel like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Like, what, like, I was just like, it's just open. And I felt aimless when I was trying to play Breath of the Wild those first two times. But the third time it clicked for me. This time, I feel like it's an easier game to get into for anyone who might not have been into Breath of the Wild, who felt it was hard to get into. I feel like this one does a better job of giving you that structure for long enough so that until it's like, okay, now that you know what you need to do, here's where you can kind of, you know what you need to do, you know what's going on. Now you can actually get into
Yeah.
the fun
So
of everything as you're going along the structure.
it's interesting. I think when we both talk about structure and limits, right? So where I was referencing structure and limits, I guess ultimately is it comes down to restraint. Well, not even restraint, but like because they didn't intend to create this crazy broken game from the start. Um, there's structure within the system. What you can do is not fundamentally limited, but they just give you a smaller scope of of a skill set of like this is how you solve puzzles. But
Yes.
narratively speaking, there is less structure. This is kind of the opposite, right? Like it starts out more handholdy in a sense. But like the systems you have, and I guess that's where I'm projecting, like maybe it goes a little too unhinged. Is it seems like it's starting off so crazy, which is like, here's what you can do. And so it's like, man, what are they expecting later on? You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like that that moment of like just like everything's too crazy. So like it starts off so high so early as far as craziness that everything loses its luster a little bit as it goes on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I worry about its lack of structure and focus is ultimately in that like in the systems, in the skill sets they're giving you, and how you, and again, I hope this is all wrong. Of course, I want this game to be a 10, and I don't think anything in the first part is necessarily not 10 worthy. Like nothing is fundamentally bad about the game.
Yeah.
It's just again apples to oranges. Like I liked the way Breath of the Wild approached that opening section more.
Yeah.
But doesn't. But I will say I love the cutscene in the beginning and the like how it narratively introduces you to everything more in Tears of the Kingdom. I thought that was super
Yes.
rad. A Demon
Yes.
King seems legit as fuck. Like I'm super hyped instead of just Ganondorf again. Like I've seen some people talk about the this is pre-game, so don't worry, this isn't spoilers. But like in the lore, I guess tier like Demon King outdates Ganondorf and is kind of like the reason what turned Ganondorf. So that'd be interesting if that's where the game goes.
Yeah.
Um, but either way, I just aesthetically thought it was super cool that it went dark and everything. But then once you like, that scene's done and everything, and you finally wake up, I I thought it was more of an impact moment for me, anyways, just like immediately like I Tears of the Kingdom kind of goes for the shock factor because I believe you have to jump off the platform right away. Versus this one, it was like
You walk
and
out.
then Breath of the Wild is like you just have that moment where it like pans over and you can see everything. And I preferred that one.
Hmm.
Because ultimately I knew what it led to, I guess. Whereas this one it was like, okay, they're trying to recreate that same feeling, but then immediately I'm hit with more limitations
Yeah.
by the island structure itself.
Yeah.
So that's just yeah. Thought it was an interesting juxtaposition of like, oh, I like this intro so much more, but now I don't like the tutorial as much versus the other way around with Breath of the Wild, where it felt very generic, but holy shit, once I got out there, this rules. Um,
I want to speak towards the abilities now, actually. I guess that could be like a segue or at least a connection point between you talk about structure and actually talk about these abilities that we have. The abilities that we have, the new ones, recall, rewinding time, fuse, lets you fuse practically any item together with weapons and shields. We have the ultra hand, letting you attach and build, create different things and all. And then ascend, letting you go up through objects and everything. And I really like this set of abilities. I like them more than I did the ones in Breath of the Wild. Now, of course, again, still 6 hours into the game as opposed to the 50 I spent in Breath of the Wild. But the ones we have in this game, this is what I thought and felt in the lead up once we saw that 10-minute gameplay demonstration when they explained and showed us each of the abilities. These, like the ones in Breath of the Wild, felt like uh I guess in comparison, they feel very simple and basic. And that's not to say that they weren't good for what they were, because you don't have any of those abilities in this game. So of course, like the ones that you had in Breath of the Wild, the two different types of bombs, the ice and the what was the other one? I
the
forgot.
stasis.
The stasis, yeah. Like they worked very well for the game and design that Breath of the Wild was, and the position and the situations that it posed for you. But in comparison, these just that we have in this one just feels so much more fun and interesting to me. Um, and like for example, the fuse is the one that you're going to be using all the time. You got a weapon and you're going to fuse another enemy weapon or just another object with your stick to make it now a weapon that was originally 2 damage and about to break after 2 hits. It's now like 7 damage because you attacked a bokoblin arm to it, and now it's just like 25 damage or something like that. Uh, I really like these abilities. Fuse is awesome. The Ultra Hand one is super cool and super unique. It's super creative. I spent, not gonna lie, I spent like 20-30 minutes making a vehicle of sorts. I posted it on Twitter, like the aftermath of it. Spent like 20-30 minutes making a vehicle, and I have B-roll of it. I either played already or it's playing right now. Uh, and like I took all the wooden panels, made myself a vehicle, put some wheels on the bottom of it, took a fan, put a fan to the back of it, attached a rocket to the bottom of it, put the energy cells on the bottom. And I said, cool, all right, let's take this thing for a drive. And I put the control stick on it as well, got on it, and I hit it to activate it. Man, when I tell you that thing, it took off. It took off. And I was like, all right, cool. Except I forgot. Oh, wait. I didn't realize that the regular wooden wheels, you can't turn those. So I couldn't turn the damn thing that I made. So it drove right into a bunch of trees. And then immediately the rocket was done for. The energy cells popped off. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to go anywhere at all. And like, although it was ultimately pointless making it, it was still fun to see, oh, I can like get creative with like get creative like that with this. It's also aside like you can use it in, I like the way that they kind of encourage you to use it in like random environmental puzzles as well. So there's a guy that you'll come across, and I imagine you'll come across him across the entire map, where he's working for some person, and he has like these signs that he wants to put up for his boss or whatever, right? And like he's holding it on one side, and he's like, "Man, I need help holding it up. It's not staying up." And it's like on the other side of the sign, you have to clearly put something to hold it up. And I think each sign that you come across, you have to put a wooden piece there in a different spot in each sign. It depends on what the sign is and where and how it looks. So it's like, okay, you have to get creative with your ultra hand use of what you're gonna fuse together and how you fuse it to have it fit against the sign so that when you tell them to let go, the sign stays up. And like the first time I didn't really get it with the tools that were near me, but like the next two times I was like, what if I do this? What if I just take a regular piece of wood, and then take a longer flat piece of wood so that it's something more stable to attach to, and then I just take it and place it next to the sign. I tell them to let go, and it stayed up. I was like, okay, boom, that works for this one. But what works for one might not work for every other because each sign has a different requirement for what you're going to need to do in terms of keeping it up. So I was like, that's cool. And then even in combat, it was literally actually before we started recording today. I was attacking this like bokoblin base, right? And
Yeah.
rolled up. I said, all right, I'm gonna use ascend because I was lower than it. So I said, I'm gonna use ascend, just ascend myself up to the platform above me, get up there. I saw there were a bunch of bomb barrels. I'm like, all right, cool. Some guys are sleeping here. There's a big guy over there. There's an archer in the distance. Try killing the archer with my regular arrows. I got him eventually, but it took a while. So then I said, all right, I'm gonna ultra hand all these bomb barrels together, pick them up, and just drop them on everyone below me because that would get rid of them. Did that, bam. And then the big guy, and then this other bokoblin who actually had a bunch of armor on him. I was like, oh shoot, never seen you before. They're just running at me. So I'm like, all right, how I'm trying to get rid of them the easiest way I could. Try to destroy more bomb barrels. Didn't work out. I missed. So I said, all right, you know what? I'm going to run around, ascend to another higher platform. That way I have some distance. Because on that platform, there were more bomb barrels. So I ultra handed like 5 of them together. And then I saw the big guy and the other bokoblin coming towards me. So I ultra handed them all together, lifted them up, and just dropped them down right on their faces. And just killed. I killed the armored guy, but the big guy still had some health left. But I was like, man, like this is awesome. And that was what I was excited about with this game as opposed to the last one. It was something I mentioned where you saw in the videos after Breath of the Wild's release of people doing these crazy creative things to take out enemies and all. But it was more a thing where if you wanted to get crazy and kooky and wacky with how you took out enemies at Breath of the Wild, you kind of had to go out your way to do it. Whereas here, it's like it's really encouraged to get creative, get kooky, get a bit wacky and weird, however you want to, with taking out enemies. And I've been loving the way it's incentivizing me to do it. It's ways encouraging me to. Like I'm going out my way to do these things that I ordinarily would have been like, you know what, I'm just gonna run up on you and just hit you in Breath of the Wild. Whereas now it's like, what's a crazy way I could get rid of these enemies? You know what? Let me like take an arrow, attach white choo-choos to it so I could freeze someone, make a freeze arrow. Like I'm just getting more creative with how I'm taking out enemies. I'm really enjoying that with this game. Like the abilities here are just so cool. And that's just combat with Ultra Hand. Like Ultra Hand gets even more interesting when it comes to the puzzles, like in the shrines or even outside the shrines. Like it's just so awesome. Oh, he's
Sorry.
coughing. Stay alive.
No, it's sneezing. Yeah.
Bless you. That
Yeah.
was a sneeze.
Uh, See, that's where for me it differs. I'm like, fuck, is this a monkey's paw situation? Like when everything's special, nothing starts to feel special, right? Like when you like, okay, you can do these creative things, but at what point? Because now I'm like at a certain level, I'm already like, is this just Breath of the Wild nuts and bolts? Like, is this just look, we took this beloved IP and now you can make fucking vehicles in it. And I'm just like, what seemed fun is only, your hubris got the best of you. Because I do like, when you're like, you have to go out of your way in Breath of the Wild to make it creative. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, you got to actually use it. Whereas, like, when the toolbox is insane, it's like, I'm almost the opposite. I'm just like, oh well, I guess I'll just fuse something together and shoot them or whatever. So I think it's interesting the way, and like I haven't done as much, so I'm like, before I say that, I'm reserving judgment. But like from the tutorial portion, I was just like, okay, so we're already making vehicles. Like I thought maybe we'd have to wait a while to do that or something. It's like, oh no, you want us to do this already? I see where this is going. Like just that cynical part of my brain just being like, yeah, I think this is the curse of iteration in general. Like this is sequels, and I think there's that natural question as a developer, like, do we expand more? How do we expand more when we make a sequel to something? Um, and I think through at multiple, like any kind of video game franchise, you see those questions posed, you see how the developer ultimately solves them, and then you have different sides of the camp no matter what, right? Like there are people that like Arkham Asylum more than Arkham City, for example. And like those are
Mhm.
two, the way they expanded fundamentally changed that game. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer necessarily. And already I'm like feeling those vibes a little bit with this game, whether, like you said, whether or not that changes or whatever. Like if I play this 50 to 100 hours, that's a lot of time. You can have a lot of different thoughts flowing in and out. And then how you feel about them as a whole is what your ultimate judgment ends up being. But it's interesting there. I liked the way they expanded Arkham City, even though I did really like Asylum.
Yeah.
Um, but like now I'm finding myself on the like anti expansion, but maybe because Breath of the Wild is itself already a very expanded game. You know what I mean? Taking what Breath of the Wild or what standard Zeldas do and like expanding that, and then this is an expansion now on top of that even. So just interesting having those thoughts flowing kind of as you play the game. But again, 3 hours is a very small sample size, and it's not that anything's bad. Like these are all, of course, what the developers are doing is fucking nuts. Like it's hard to create systems like this. It's not like saying these
Shoot.
systems suck, but in the grand implementation of within this universe that matters as far as like for some people how they enjoy the game. And it comes down to how everyone reacts to being presented with certain skill sets. Like I reacted much more positively obviously from the last set than you did. Now to clarify, I do love Ascend. I think Ascend's my favorite so far because it's the
Mhm.
simplest but also the most like, oh shit, yeah, like of course I can do that. You almost forget you have it, and then you just
Yeah.
go like, fuck, how am I gonna do? And then you go, oh yeah, yeah, I got Ascend. Like finding the fourth shrine, I was like, oh, I immediately got there, and unlike I saw some people had issues with this, but because it's kind of like quote unquote hidden, they're like making you think about it a little bit. And I was like, okay, yeah, obviously I go on there, I reverse those wheels, and I'm like, the fuck do I get up there? I'm trying to climb and everything, and then like after like 3 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, my dumbass, you have Ascend, and then I was like, oh okay, that was pretty easy. Um, but yeah, so that's why I do like Ascend. It seems like it's already got some of that like, how do I? Oh yeah, Ascend, and then it's just like very easy, very simple, but also like can be used in a million ways. Whereas everything else is very nuts and bolts. It's just like fuse 8 different things together and blah blah blah. I love the simplicity in comparison of just like, oh yeah, link go up.
Link go up. That's it. Yeah, speaking to like your thing about a said like just kind of forgetting you can do it and all. I was when I was playing, and I do have B-roll of this in the footage as well. I just got a horse, and then I'm like, all right, cool. I saw some enemies, so I went to go fight them and everything. And then it turns out it was one of those we saw them in the trailers. The stone beast, the stone talus things that has like an enemy base on top of it. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, got it. So I immediately ran away real quick. I was like, all right, what am I gonna do right now? So then I was like, all right, let me try like popping some arrow shots. And it wasn't working. I was like, wait, duh. Let me use a
Just
sin to go on top
just
of it and kill the
yeah.
enemies. And once I had that moment, I was like, yo, Ascend, you're too cool. Like I completely forgot I could do it. But it really when it when it can apply to combat situations, it changes how you think about the scenario. Like again, like the boss, like the
Yeah.
the what's the state the one I was talking about before, where I like went into
The
the
yeah, this
stronghold.
Stone
The,
Chalice or whatever. Yeah, they call them.
the
I forget.
yeah, the stronghold actually, the one that I was talking about before, where I was like, wait a minute, let me just use ascend to get up to this next level and like take care of the bombs there. Originally, like I was thinking, man, how am I gonna get up there? Because like run around them maybe, but no, ascend, duh, so much easier.
Yeah, it's the most Breath of the Wild ability in that it was clearly meant to just solve one simple complaint, right? Some people had issues with like, oh, well, if we can't climb everywhere, then how are we? And so like clearly someone in the development room was like, yo, what if we just and they were just like, that's great. And then when you apply it across anything, you're like, holy shit, there's endless possibilities, all because of this small solution. Versus like everything else feels like, but what if? And then they pose the biggest thing ever that probably took forever to develop and is technically impressive, but you're like, yeah, but it's intentional chaos versus like that little spark leading to like, oh shit, we can do this a million different ways. That's I think where it comes down to for me.
Mm.
So we'll see if I turn around. We'll see if I have enough fun with it to be like, whatever. The brilliance I hope of the game is that I can still potentially like not have to do some of that stuff and play it my own way and still get enjoyment out of the game. That'll be the ultimate test. Or did you build it so much around chaos that if someone wants to restrict themselves, that they still can, or is the game does that break the game? And they're like, no, 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 because is it truly no rules if now all of a sudden me wanting to play with a little bit of rules is an issue? So we'll see. My gut
Mm-hmm.
says that like these are just, but the good thing is this creates there is like a big difference between these two games, right? Ultimately, I want difference in a game. Like, so I'm glad they at least tried something ambitious and it's not Breath of the Wild 2.0. Like, I'm glad there's difference, even if I ultimately don't like the difference as much because like video game developers, I don't want them to feel like it has to be so iterative of each other. And
Mm-hmm.
clearly, they didn't want to just do exactly Breath of the Wild again, which I totally understand.
Yeah. I just want to talk about the world real quickly. I'm
Mhm.
only 6 hours in. I haven't really left that main first area that you have on the world map and all. I'm just now starting to expand out of it. But it was really just in there. But from what I've seen, um, I like the world so far. Like this area at the very least. Yes, it is a familiar area, but it's also different in the sense it's like, wait a minute, like I remember Breath of the Wild being here, there being more ruins around. Guardians were all over the place, whereas now it's like this middle section of the map, it's like, no, we're chill. We're chill. We're more calm. It's more peaceful here. I don't have to be on edge all the time. Uh, it's interesting going around and then seeing for just like stuff fall out the sky. The rocks that we've seen fall out the sky. You can recall to ride back up. Uh, Seeing those, but so far there haven't been too many stark differences. Like, oh wow, I remember this from the last one. Aside from like the obvious piece of the main center, um, I haven't gone to any of these other areas where it's like, man, I remember Kakariko Village in the first one. I wonder how it is now. It's so crazy different now. But there are areas on the map, at least that I just got introduced to some where it's like there's a clear difference here, and
Yeah.
it opens the door for a whole lot more possibility that I'm very eager to learn more about and expand and explore and see what's going on with this stuff now. Because I'm just like, oh, that's different right there. That's interesting. That's exciting. It's like a different dynamic and everything. I'm really curious to see what's going on with this right now. Um, and I haven't been to any other major sky islands since the first one. Like there have been, like I said, rocks fall down and I'll ride them back up. So far, the ones I've done, they just brought me to like a little mini sky island that has a chest on it, and I'm like, all right, cool, get the chest, and I'll jump on back down and go wherever else I want to. But I haven't been to any other major sky islands, but you can clearly see them all in the sky. At least you can see what they are in the sky and all like that. Um, the towers, I've only done the one, but like there have been other towers. So I thought about going to them, but I haven't. I'm like, no, I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna go this way, and I'll do stuff over there. There are shrines back in this game, and I like the shrines. I feel
I'm
like
pro shrines though.
yeah, I mean, like I was never necessarily against the shrines in the last game. I like them here. They are definitely testing the brain for sure in terms of what abilities do I use to get through this, or how do I use the abilities I have in conjunction with one another to get through this shrine. There was what I was stuck on yesterday for a bit, where I was like, how do I do this? So I put it on, I paused it, went out for the day, came back, and I solved it in like 20 minutes when I got back home. Not even 20 minutes, it took me like 10 minutes when I got back home. I was like, oh, got it. And it was more so I was struggling because I thought I had glitched myself out of being able to complete it because of the ultra hand ability. I was like, why is it not letting me grab what I could clearly grab before? But I ended up making it work and got through it. I was like, cool, fantastic. But I mean, I've seen footage of like people solving shrines in really interesting, creative ways where it's like you got it done, just like in Breath of the Wild, where it's like there is a clear way to do it, but it's like, hey, however you get it done, you get it done. And I feel like from the ones I've done so far, I think that there might, I mean, the ones I've done so far has been what? The four that you have on the Great Sky Island, which is your tutorial ones. I think I've done two combat ones, which are very obviously teaching you something. They're direct how to get this done. I think I've done two or so other puzzle ones since I've gotten to Hyrule. And the two puzzle ones I've done since I got to Hyrule, they definitely are the assortment of use your brain, figure it out. There is, I guess, I feel like there might be like a clear directed way that it's meant to be done, but I've been like, how am I going to get through this? And one of them, the one I was doing yesterday, I feel like I maybe thought outside the box a bit to get it done. The one I did today, it was very clear what needed to be done and easy peasy,
Yeah.
lemon squeezy. Uh, so I'm liking the shrines. I feel like you'll probably like them too. I mean, if you like the shrines of the last game, I'm sure you'll like the
Yeah,
shrines in this game.
I do.
Um, performance, it's also exactly like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's exactly the same. Props to the team for no frame drops when you're going up and down between the island, sky islands and the ground. But man, yeah, that frame rate dips on Hyrule when you're in forested areas again. Ultra Hand demolishes the frame rate, especially when you're making something big. Like as soon as you activate Ultra Hand, the frame rate dips a bit instantly. But like when you're making something pretty intricate and big, the bigger it is, whenever you ultra hand it to grab it, like that frame rate tanks while you're using it, like into the low 20s. And I'm just like, okay, this is what we're doing.
The
It is what
backwards
it is.
compatible version of this on whatever the next one is going to be sick.
I hope so. I hope so.
Like, yeah, but this is what Breath of the Wild was. I mean, I never held any bones about it. Like, it
Yeah.
was clearly being limited by the Switch fucking 6 years, 7 years ago, So it's like, of course, this one is as well.
Yeah.
But
Like my
props
Switch
for
is
it not
docked.
being worse so far.
Say again?
I said props just for not being worse because like add more
Yes.
stuff in, you would assume maybe runs even worse now. Instead, it's just like, well, the same pretty much.
It's about the same. It's just about the same way. Uh yeah, I play my thing docked and like I hear that fan going in the Switch. That fan is going while I play this. I'm like, woof. I can only imagine like how it kills the battery playing it handheld. I can't even imagine what
Yeah, I've
that's
been
like.
playing docked with pro controllers the only way.
Joy
I
Cons
hate
for
the
me.
ones.
I
Huh?
want to get I want to get a pro controller. I play with the Joy Cons, but I want to get a pro controller just to
Oh,
have one.
you've never got a pro controller?
They're like $80, dude. It's not that serious.
They're one of the best controllers I've ever held.
So I've
I'm not.
heard, but I don't play my
Yeah,
Switch enough. I don't play my Switch
it is
enough to
worth
spend
it.
that much money on it.
Oh man, I got one kind of cheap. I got one like clearance early on. I think, or no,
Mm,
it wasn't clearance, but I think I got it for it's cheap. I got it for like 50, $60. But
nice.
it is, oh man, the second I got it early on in my Switch too, I could never in a million years go back to only Joy-Con. Like I do think it makes kind of like a world of difference.
Yeah, I bought new Joy Cons for this though because the ones I had, the right stick was drifting. So I was
The
like,
Joy-Cons are just as expensive.
here's the thing. I'd rather have the Joy Cons that I can like use anywhere, wherever, like real easily, as opposed to the Pro Controller where it's like it's a bit more of a hassle taking it around. So I was like, and on top of that, again, I like the Joy Cons. I have no issue with them. So Joy Cons it is.
Here we go. Let's take your gamer pass. All right, I'm gonna take it back.
No,
We'll give this
no,
back to you whenever you earn.
nope. I will take that right back from you. Thank you very much. Uh, final thoughts, final early thoughts, impressions for Tears of the Kingdom. Tyler, go.
uh, I didn't get to talk about the world really. I do love. I think Nintendo does a good job, or I think the developers found like just such a cool aesthetic with the future tech stuff,
Yes.
and juxtaposing it in the world of Hyrule. It truly is like that. And man, the arm drip goes hard, man. Link looks sick. Just
He
that
does.
tattoo he's got, the fucking arm looks rad. Like the long hair, it feels longer. I don't know. I'm here for it. Yeah, I just think aesthetically the game and the art style are so incredibly awesome. Like still 10 out of 10 for that. Uh and yeah, I'm looking forward to sinking. I hope I can get at least like 20 hours in this next week. If not more,
Mhm.
depending. But we'll see. Maybe it'll only be like 10, 15-ish. It'll be a little bit of a letdown. But I'm trying to cross that 20 hour threshold within the coming week. That way it'll
Yeah.
be like I come back and I'm like, oh, I'm 25 hours deep. Let's see how I feel about it.
I'm
Yeah.
25 hours deep. I have beat the game at least once. I'm
No,
about.
that's the thing. Like for me, when I roll credits, I'm not a new game plus person. So I'm gonna do everything I want, finally beat the game. Like if I beat it at 100 hours like I was for Breath of the Wild, I beat Breath of the Wild and I was like, I'm done. But I played
So
100 hours. So like I got a shit ton of like I mean my the boss fight was cake because I was just so OP at that point.
yeah,
But I had a blast doing it. So I'm gonna take the same approach. I don't plan on doing like multiple runs and shit. Um, I do it all as like one big shot.
nice. Nice. Well, my final thoughts so far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it way more than I thought I would have a year ago. Hell, I'm enjoying it way more than I thought I would have in January. It was March that turned me around on this game so hard. And from March on, I was like, wait a minute, I think this might be it. This might hit in a way that I was not expecting. And I know earlier in the year, we did our games we were hyped for 2023, and I said, maybe Zelda will be my dark horse game. As I played this, I was like, oh man, I think I was onto something there. I think Zelda very well could end up being my dark horse game of the year, depending on how it goes from here on in, depending on how other games turn out. But honestly, I am loving this game so much more than I ever did Breath of the Wild. It's just hitting me on every level. The story is what I've done with so far more interesting so far. The gameplay mechanics and abilities, I'm really excited by them. I really enjoy using them. And that pull that I talked about, never really feeling so strongly of like wanting to explore the world of Breath of the Wild, I feel it so hard with Tears of the Kingdom. And I don't know if it's just new game hype. I don't know if it's the excitement of, all right, it's I have all these new abilities that for me to explore the world. I don't know what it is, but I'm just really feeling that pull to explore Hyrule in this game that I never felt before. So I don't know. I'm loving it so far. I'm really enjoying it. I'm so excited after we're done recording today, edit this thing up, start doing laundry, and just bam, pop in a bunch of hours today. So it's going to be a great time. Of course, we'll be talking about it more and more over the next
It's gonna
two
be what
episodes.
it'll be the like what we're playing, yeah, for the next two episodes.
Essentially, it's going to be that. So
Yeah.